Hey guys, welcome back to My Sports Vice podcast. This is the second part of the wide receiver podcast for the 2016 fantasy draft. It's a very deep field, so I broke it up into two podcasts. Did the first 12 on the first, and I'm going to do 13 through 25. I've been doing top 20, but I'm going to do the top 25 on this one. You guys, you can't go wrong with a lot of these receivers. Even the ones that aren't in the top 10 are solid receivers. If you're in a PPR league, I would advise going with receivers early. Most standard leagues have quarterbacks getting 4 points for a touchdown, whereas you're not going to get as much bang for your buck. Wide receivers is the way to go. So as far as the podcast goes, I think I've told you guys before, if you've listened, you can get us now on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. It's My Sports Vice, all one word. You can go to our website, mysportsvice.com, and you can subscribe to YouTube, or you can do it through YouTube if you like. And then, of course, you can get our audio podcasts on iTunes or through our website. If you guys like the website, or I'm sorry, the podcast, if they're helpful to you and you think they're all right, tell your friends about them, put it on Facebook for me. I need to get the word out. Appreciate it. Let's get started. Number 13 on the wide receiver list is Brandon Marshall. He had a huge year last year, 14 touchdowns. You rarely see a wide receiver, any wide receiver, have a big year like that and then have the same amount of touchdowns the next year, because he ends up drawing more coverage and doesn't get as many red zone looks, things like that. I wouldn't expect to see him get 14 touchdowns again this year, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Between him and Eric Decker had 12 touchdowns, and it's rare to see two receivers on one team get double-digit touchdowns. So he's still a great receiver. They signed Fitzpatrick a couple days ago, so he's definitely got his quarterback back. And they play in a division with some high-scoring teams, and they're going to be having to throw the ball. They don't have a real good running game. They went and got Forte. He's still on the back end of 30, or on the back. He's 30, I think he is, maybe 31. So he's going to be a pretty good running back, but I like Brandon Marshall at number 13. Number 14, Brandon Cooks. It's tough to draft Saints wide receivers because Breeze, who obviously throws for a lot of yards, he throws 600 times a year. He's in the top 10 every year in yardage. But he spreads the ball out, and he doesn't have a number one receiver. He spreads it out. So it's really hard to draft a wide receiver, but it looks like Cooks is going to be his deep threat. He had a decent season last year. He started off slow. He only had like 215 yards in the first 4 games, and after that he ended up scoring 9 touchdowns in the last 12 games. So he ended up building a rapport with Breeze. I looked at their schedule. If they're not playing indoors at home, they're playing a couple or maybe 3 games on the West Coast, which means they'll be in good weather, which is perfect for them. It's a high-scoring offense. Cooks is good, and I have him at number 14. Definitely a number 1 wide receiver. Sammy Watkins. The only reason I have him this low at 15 is because I really am not sure about Tyrod Taylor's passing game. The thing that with Taylor is what makes him a good fantasy back is his rushing ability, and he didn't throw that well last year. He did all right, but Watkins was his number 1 target. Watkins missed a couple games with some injuries. He missed 3 games, and he still put up some pretty solid numbers. So if he plays all 16 games and Tyrod Taylor has a good season, he can put 1,500 yards up, and maybe even a dozen touchdowns. So he's a pretty solid pick. Kelvin Benjamin for the Panthers, number 16 is where I have him. He missed all of last year with the ACL. He did that early. He did it in training camp, so he's had a full year to recover. And like I mentioned in the other podcast, players are recovering from these ACL injuries a lot better than they did in the past. I wouldn't worry about the knee injury, and reports are saying that he looks really good in training camp. Cam Newton had an MVP season without him last year. He had 35 touchdowns without him last year. Kelvin Benjamin will definitely be his number 1 target. He's going to be a good pick. You might even be able to get him late. Keenan Allen, I have at number 17 for the Chargers. He missed a lot of the season. He missed the last 8 games of the season with a kidney problem. When he was averaging 90 yards a game before that injury, and he gobbles up a lot of targets. He gets a lot of targets. He misses out on some red zone targets because of Antonio Gates, but he's getting kind of old too. So I see Keenan Allen getting, if you're in a PPR league, he's even higher than at number 17, but he'll get a few yards. They like to throw the ball. The running game's really not that strong, so Keenan Allen is a good pick in the top 20 at number 17. Number 18 is Jarvis Landry. He had 110 catches last year. That was 6th in the NFL. He had 166 targets, which is a lot of targets. That's 10 a game. And now his new head coach is Adam Gase. Adam Gase was the offensive coordinator in Denver with Peyton Manning. He loves to throw the ball. So I would expect Landry to have another good season. Devontae Parker is the other receiver on that team, and he's supposed to be really good too. But Landry is the go-to guy. He'll get a lot of targets and hopefully get in the end zone a few times. At number 19, I got T.Y. Hilton. He didn't have a great season last year, and that was part of the reason was because Matt Hasselbeck was throwing at him. He still put up 1,100 yards and had 134 targets, but, you know, Andrew Luck wasn't in there most of the season. Andrew Luck will come back strong this year. I have him ranked very high, I think number 3 on my draft picks for quarterbacks, and I can see Hilton getting 100 catches. They play on turf most of the time. He's going to be a solid receiver, could get 1,500 yards. Julian Edelman, I have him dropped at number 20. He was having a great year until he broke his foot. I actually had him on my team, and he was doing really well for me, but he got hurt. He's I think in his 7-year career, he's only played a full season once. He does tend to get injured a lot, but when he's in there, Brady really goes to him. He averages 9.4 targets a game, which is more than Gronk gets. So Brady's going to miss the first 4 games. Garoppolo, the backup quarterback, could use Edelman as a heavy target because it's kind of a security blanket kind of thing. Edelman's a good player, but you have to factor in the fact that he gets hurt every year. But I have him at number 20. Number 21, Doug Baldwin. He had a great second half of the season. Wilson decided to start throwing the ball more, or Seattle did, partly because Lynch was hurt, but Lynch is gone now. They have a Thomas Rawls at running back. We don't know about him yet. He had some good games last year, but I like to see Wilson throwing the ball more, and Doug Baldwin had over 100 targets last year, and I think he's going to have a pretty good year this year. They might start utilizing Jimmy Graham more than they did last year before he got hurt, and he might take away a few red zone looks, but it looks like Baldwin's going to be an up-and-coming receiver. I have him at number 21. Fitzgerald, I have him at 22. Larry Fitzgerald for the Cardinals. He's getting on there in age, but he's really adapted well to becoming more of a slot receiver or a possession receiver. He's got Michael Floyd and John Brown going deep. The best part about Fitzgerald is he's sure-handed. He gets a lot of targets, and Arizona loves to throw the ball. So he's a good pick. I actually have him a little lower than I probably should. I have him at 22, but that's a good solid pick as your second receiver. I also have Randall Cobb at number 24. Hold on a second. I made an adjustment. Jarvis Landry. That's who I was talking about. Jarvis Landry. I have him at... Oh, wait. Where am I? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Okay. At number... Where am I? Number 23. I've got Eric Decker. Solid. He had 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns last year, and that's with Brandon Marshall on the other side. I expect to see maybe not 12 touchdowns, but he'll have 1,000 yards. He's a good possession receiver, gets a lot of looks. He was consistent all year long. Another wide receiver is, we're starting getting into the second of a pair of receivers. We've got Jeremy Maclin. he had a better year than I thought he would, because Kansas City tends to be very conservative with Alex Smith. But Macklin had a pretty decent year last year. He should have about 1,200 yards. If he gets lucky, maybe he'll get in the end zone 10 times. He didn't do very well in that end of it last year, but he's all right. Randall Cobb, he wasn't ready to be a number one receiver last year. They had Jordy Nelson down with a knee injury the whole season, so Randall Cobb was kind of forced to be in a number one position receiver, and he isn't really cut out for that, I don't think. And he's more of a possession receiver, and he's so small and quick that it's hard for him to handle double coverage. With Jordy Nelson back, I think he'll start seeing more one-on-one coverage where he can create space and get open. So I think he's going to have a good season. Nobody's happier than, well, maybe Aaron Rodgers, to see Nelson back than Cobb, because I think Cobb's going to have a much better year, more like he had a couple of years ago. He'd probably get double-digit touchdowns in that high-flying offense. Those are my top 25. The field is so deep. Look who I didn't even have on the list. Emmanuel Sanders for Denver, Michael Floyd for Arizona, Matthews in Philadelphia, Alan Hearns in Jacksonville, Deshaun Jackson, he's a deep threat in Washington. Crabtree had a good season last year. These are all guys that you can get late. That's I've given you the top 25, and there's still another 5 to 10 receivers that are going to have good seasons. So keep that in mind. It's a deep field. Personally, I'm going after receivers early in the draft because I'm in a PPR league. But take that into consideration. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm going to be doing a podcast for tight ends as well, and then after a couple weeks, I'll probably do the sleeper picks for the season, guys you can get late in the draft. I already had one draft today, did pretty good. I ended up with Cam Newton, Amari Cooper, AJ Green, Latavius Murray, Tyler Eifert. I ended up with some pretty good players on my team. I didn't take, these guys were taking kickers in the 12th round or whatever. I wait. I don't take a kicker or a defense till the very end of the draft, and I load up my bench. But that's my philosophy. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Like I said, tell your friends about us, and I'll be doing more podcasts later. Thanks for listening. This is Jeff with My Sports Vice. I'm out.